Ladies and gentlemen, it's official. Saints star cornerback Marshon Lattimore has been officially traded to the Washington Commanders after a whole year of trade speculation dating back to January. But now, just a day after firing head coach Dennis Allen, the Saints made yet another huge move by trading away one of their best players. And with this trade, the Saints will be looking towards the future and rebuilding their roster instead of being in a win-now mode like they have been for the last 4 seasons. What does this mean for the Saints moving forward in the future? What did they get in return for Marshon Lattimore? The Commanders are getting a really good player, and what does it mean for them? And how does this impact the Saints cap moving forward? Let's dive into it. I won't play an ad. All I ask is that you subscribe to this channel. We're on our way to 10K. Want to hit it before the end of the NFL season, so if you haven't already, just go ahead and check if you're subscribed. I'd appreciate it if you could support the channel and myself. Alright, let's talk about this trade. So the Washington Commanders have officially made a trade for Marshon Lattimore after he spent 8 seasons with the New Orleans Saints. And before we get into any of that, I just want to say thank you to Marshon Lattimore. Dude is a Saints legend, Saints Hall of Famer. Dude might be the best defensive player I've ever seen play, maybe outside of Demario Davis. One of the best corners I've ever seen. He's playing lights out right now. He helped change the culture in 2017. He got drafted and the Saints went to the divisional playoffs. Dude, he's a huge part and a pillar of the Saints franchise. So just want to thank him and start off with that because it feels right. I don't want to talk about the details first. Like just appreciation for Marshon Lattimore, what he did for the organization. I also want to wish him the best of luck in Washington, and I hope he gets a ring because this is it's a rough but needed day. You know, it sucks the Saints had to move off of him, but the Saints needed to. They need to start looking towards the future. So I'm happy for him that he's now going to be able to go compete and play meaningful games with a team that could go win a lot of games in the future. He's still only 28 years old, so shout out to him. And it's not just the Saints fan thing. I mean, Michael Thomas is out here posting on Twitter photos of him, AK, and Lattimore just chilling with the fans back in 2017. That was just a great time to be a Saints fan. So it's a rough day. Just wanted to thank him. And now Alvin Kamara is the last member from that 2017 draft class on the Saints. Crazy to think about. I mean, Lattimore ranks first in Saints history in passes defended. He's tied 6th with interceptions, 18th in tackles, 25th in forced fumbles. Like at some point, he will end up in the Saints Hall of Fame, maybe the Ring of Honor. So just showing appreciation to him. That's all I really got to say. So let's get into this trade. News broke about 30 minutes ago that Marshon Lattimore would be traded to the Washington Commanders. Now, when it comes to trade details, the Washington Commanders sent the New Orleans Saints a 3rd-round pick, a 4th-round pick, and a 6th-round pick, which they got from the Saints when they traded for John Ridgeway. So the Saints basically got their old 6th-round pick back. And the Saints sent the Commanders Marshon Lattimore and a 5th-round pick. Now, is this good value for Marshon Lattimore? No, a lot of fans and Saints fans wanted to get a 2nd-round pick minimum. But reality is the cornerback market, this is a really good trade for a cornerback. Jalen Ramsey was traded for a 3rd-round pick. Darius Slay was traded for a 3rd and a 5th. L'Jarius Sneed was traded for a 3rd and a 5th-round pick. So in terms of value, the Saints might have actually got more than they wanted. A 3rd-round pick, a 4th-round pick, and a 6th-round pick. That's good. And when you consider the fact that he's been dealing with injuries the last 3 seasons, hasn't played a full season in like 4 years, 5 years, missed 2022, most of it with a lacerated kidney, missed most of 2023 with a high ankle sprain. Now he's dealing with a hamstring injury. Now, I don't know how much of that has to do with him not wanting to play with Dennis Allen. A huge reason why these trade rumors and stuff and speculation had appeared was because he was having problems and issues with Dennis Allen. And after he got fired, it was like, oh, well, these remain. And here we are a day later, and he got traded. But overall, looking at the value, considering Lattimore is 28 years old, looking at his contract, looking at his injury history, given the situation, what the Saints got in return may not be what we know he's valued at. Like, Lattimore is worth a 2nd-round pick. But in terms of the market, this is probably as good as it's going to get. And there's a lot of other teams interested, like the Ravens, the Chargers, and the Chiefs. But ultimately, I'm assuming Mickey Loomis and the Saints felt that the Commanders had the best offer and they took it. Because no one else was going to offer anything better or more than a third-round pick. They weren't going to get a second-round pick for him. Now, I will say, though, something I do not like is the Commanders had 2 third-round picks. They traded Jahan Dotson to the Eagles for a third-round pick earlier this season, and the Saints got the Washington Commanders' third-round pick, not the Eagles. And there's a big difference. That's a 21-pick difference. And there was reported, or there was speculation that the Saints would want a higher third-round pick if they were to trade Lattimore. So maybe throwing in the 4th-round pick changed things a little bit. All those draft picks aren't this year's draft class. My only criticism right now is that you got pick 93 instead of pick 72, because that's a big difference. Now, for any Commander fans who are watching this, if you're trying to figure out where you're getting a Marshon Lattimore, dude is a stud. I don't know if he's even allowed more than 10 catches this season. Hasn't allowed over 100 yards, that's for sure. Teams do not throw the ball at his side at all. Like, he shuts down the entire half of the field. You don't have to put a safety over him. He does his job. You're getting a really good player. I'm sure the Washington Commanders are going to redo his contract a little bit, but the player you're getting is really good. I don't know if the injury thing that he's dealing with is actually an injury, or if it will be a Devontae Adams situation where he's healthy after he gets traded, but you're getting a good player. He's still 28 years old. He's not a super old guy, and he's a guy who you could probably bring in like they did, and he can help establish and help build upon the culture that Jaden Daniels and the Commanders already have. He could help be a leader to the younger guys. Maybe he can help Forbes be a better player, but you're getting a shutdown top three corner in the NFL. And I'm not saying this to exaggerate. He's playing like one of the best players in the NFL right now. Like, the only corner I think that is better than him is Patrick Surtain, and even then it's like neck and neck. So Commander fans, you should be happy you're getting a really good player. You're about to be competing for a long time, as long as Jaden Daniels is your quarterback. Saints fans, you should be excited for the possibility of the future of getting draft picks. But later on this season, the Saints should be seeing Marshon Lattimore, because the Saints do play the Washington Commanders in the Superdome in December. So that'll be very interesting to see. I don't know if Lattimore will be injured or not, but that could be a Marshon Lattimore revenge game towards the Saints. And how hilarious would it be if he picked off Derek Carr, jumped in the stands, and celebrated with the fans? The fans would celebrate with him. I don't think people would be pissed off about it. Colin Saunders on Twitter, after the news was reported and announced, he went to Twitter and said, "My God, we got to play this animal still." No, like, players know how good this guy is. So what does this mean for the Saints moving forward? Well, I think this means the Saints are accepting and embracing a rebuild. They need to rebuild. They've really had to rebuild over the last few years, but it's going to be difficult. They still owe Marshon Lattimore $31 million due to dead money, but due to his restructure back in January, the Saints will only have to pay him in 2025. They have no money tied to him beyond then. You should be seeing this little graphic, or this nice little breakdown from Mike Triplett here on the screen. So though, about break even when it comes to the cap in 2025, this number, it's a big number, but the Saints, this is a nice step forward into them accepting the rebuild. Now, I don't know if any other trades will go down, or if they will go down, but Carl Granderson has also been a rumor to the Detroit Lions. Chase Young is a possible guy who I'd like to see the Saints just get rid of for a 5th-round pick. But what I also want to mention is Derek Carr. Should the Saints trade Derek Carr? He's due $50 million in 2025. You cannot pay him that. You cannot pay him that. You cannot pay Cam Jordan the money he's due next season. DeMario Davis and Tyrann Mathieu, I'd ask if they want to take a pay cut or something. There's a lot of bad contracts on this team, and it's not like the Saints can cut them. Like, it doesn't get better by cutting them, because they've dug themselves in a very, very deep hole. It doesn't get better seeing the cap situation. The only way to get out of this situation is to restructure contracts to get out of it, but you don't want to restructure the contracts of these older players, because you're tied to them for even longer. It's a constant, endless loop of disaster. So if they can find a way to get Derek Carr off the books, trade him to the Raiders or the Colts or something, or release him, make him a post-June 1st cut, find a way to get off of that contract. That is a bad contract. Just like a lot of the other players, like Cam Jordan, getting like $12 million next season, like, that can't happen. Like, have him take a pay cut or have him retire, but you cannot pay him that. And like I said, this does not get better soon. The Saints are still $60 million over the cap, and their only way out of this is to restructure more contracts, which puts them tied to these players longer than they should, and they're in the situation because they've been terrible at drafting. And now they're going to be looking for a head coach, and none of the top candidates for a head coaching job are looking at the Saints as a good spot. The Saints, out of all the teams that will need a head coach, are probably going to be at the bottom of the list. The Saints are not going to get the head coach they want. No coach is looking at the Saints with zero cap space and bad drafting and an old roster, and they're looking at Derek Carr and they're saying, hey, let's go there. Guys only get this opportunity maybe once, and they're not going to tie themselves to no money, bad drafting, old roster, and Derek Carr. The Saints have zero young talent, and the talent they do have that's young, Olave, who knows what's holding in the future for him? Shaheed has bad knee injuries. It is not a good situation. Now, something that could maybe be desirable for a new head coach is the Saints' current draft picks in position. They currently have the number 3 overall pick in the draft right now. Hopefully, the Saints continue to go along that path. But why don't we look at their current draft picks now after this trade? So they have a first-round pick, second-round pick, 2 thirds, 2 fourths, a 6th, and possibly 2 seventh-round picks, which they'll get for the compensatory picks. I wouldn't mind trading Chase Young or Willie Gay for a possible 5th or 6th round pick to add to that. This team needs as many draft picks as possible so they can draft as many young, cheap players and talented players as possible so that they can get rid of Derek Carr and they can get rid of Cam Jordan and Demario Davis can retire, and you're not relying on these guys for so long. But the only way that they'll be able to do that is if they draft better, and obviously the number 1 asset the Saints got today was a 3rd round pick. The 3rd round picks the Saints have had since 2017 are Traquan Smith, Zach Bond, Adam Troutman, Adebo, and Kendre Miller. That's rough. Traquan Smith was meh. He was okay. Zach Bond was terrible for the Saints. He's killing it with the Eagles. Troutman, what a miss. Paulson Adebo, I think for a 3rd round pick, that's a good pick. Kendre Miller, talent is there. Dude can't stay healthy. That's a whiff. They've hit on 1 3rd round pick basically in the last 7 years. That can't happen. The Saints need to draft better. But at least now the Saints are building for the future and trying to get younger now that Marshon Lattimore was traded. The Saints still have Alontae Taylor at cornerback. He's a really good player. I think the potential is really high on him. He just needs to clean up the little details a little bit. They have Kool-Aid McKinstry, who they drafted in the 2nd round. He struggled a little bit recently, but I still have a lot of confidence and faith that he'll turn it around and be a good player for the Saints. Rico Payton shined in the preseason. Got to see him play, but there's potential there. And Paulson Adebo, he's hurt. He's a free agent after the season, but given his injury, maybe he comes back to the Saints on a 1-year deal because no one is paying a guy who just broke his femur a lot of money. And on top of that, the Saints draft and scout the cornerback position well. Or maybe they don't. I don't know how much of that was Dennis Allen or not, but history has shown that they do a good job scouting cornerbacks. But the Saints still do have good young players at cornerback, which is important to know and what made this Marshon Lattimore trade a lot easier than, say, if they traded him away and then Brandon Browner was the number 2 guy. They have guys in place to take over. It's just none of them are as good as Marshon Lattimore, and that's okay. The Saints don't need a Marshon Lattimore right now. They're 2-7. They just need to rebuild, send him to a good team, let him compete, use those draft picks to get younger. There's no point in having a player like Marshon Lattimore play for you if you're going to go 2-7. And now building towards the future, getting those 3 draft picks I think was really important for the Saints to do, and I'm glad they did it. It sucks. Marshon Lattimore is a great player. It sucks to lose him, but it was needed. But the only way this trade turns out good for the Saints is if the Saints turn those draft picks into good players. And I'm skeptical about whether or not they'll draft the right players or not, but as of right now, the compensation that the Saints got and the Washington Commanders got, to me, is a win-win. Let me know what you make of the Marshon Lattimore trade. Good, bad, pissed off. I understand all of it. It's rough, man, but to me, it was much needed. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts on the trade. Subscribe to my channel, Cash Sports, for more daily NFL content. Have a good one. Peace.